You have quite the credentials.
Thank you. I guess you could say I've had a varied history.
You grew up on the East Coast, drove cross country to California, got a degree in neuroscience with a minor in biochemical engineering. Your previous places of employment are impressive as well.
Thanks. Just hard work. That's all it was. Nothing special.
So, tell me, why do you want to work for our applied science and medical research team?
To be honest, and I know this is going to sound cheesy, but it's just to make a difference. There was a time in my life when I was selfish. I had to be, to leave my family and friends, to pursue a degree, to amass this collection of accomplishments that you so generously complimented me on. But now, especially looking back on how everything has changed since 2020, I just want to be part of the solution. I want to be able to say my work means something. Saved lives.
Noble answer.
I didn't intend it to be. Just stating how I feel.
Your resume alone qualifies you for this job. However, it takes more than stats to be effective in this line of work. You'll be working for Division now. You're basically a government employee. With that comes special access. Certain standards and rules that apply to the common population don't apply to us here, and I have to know that you'll be okay using that authority to get the job done.
Not sure I follow completely. Are you saying that you want to know if I'll be willing to bend the rules?
That's just it. Once you're on the team, there are no rules. There's a goal, and you can use whatever you have to in order to reach that goal.
So, like access to certain equipment and materials?
Equipment, materials, test subjects, human test subjects, clinical trials. We will be testing virus strands and vaccines on human patients long before any of the other medical facilities.
Human trials are an extremely difficult thing to get approved for.
Not for us. I need to know if you're okay with things like this.
If it's all for the betterment of society, if it helps save lives, then
Of course it will.
if that's the case, I'm in.
Wonderful. Let me call in Dr. Seaver, who will be helping you with the onboarding process.
The very least I could do is make sure that these records are preserved, so people know it happened. The whole thing started in 2020. All of it. The virus, the lockdowns, the mass hysteria. We were pushed to the brink. The scientific and medical community was under so much pressure. People clamoring for a vaccine, some even accusing the scientific community of stagnating, not doing anything. When a vaccine for the virus was finally manufactured, it sparked a revolution of scientific interest. The world was not about to be caught off guard like that again. We, as the scientific community, vowed to be more proactive, funneling millions and millions of dollars into clandestine scientific research. And after the hysteria died down, our research facility began examining every permutation of the virus we could possibly manufacture. Its research name was VIX. VI for virus, like in its original designation. Virus X. We just didn't know that it was...
What are you doing?
I'm recording.
Why? You look like a nerd with that thing.
When the power grid goes down, we're gonna go back to using old tech like this. Mark my words.
You're recording me?
No. Not that you're not infinitely interesting. I'm doing a series of audio logs, like an audio journal.
For the trials?
Yeah.
Are you allowed to do that?
Well, not really. That's why I'm using this old thing. You can't hack this. Plus, years from now, imagine how much this kind of documentation will be worth.
Still not a fan of this whole thing, to be honest.
It'll be fine, trust me.
Starting the recording for posterity's sake. Doctors Seaver and Lone, Lab Site Z. VIX Research Protocol.
Doctor, do you wish to summarize the findings verbally for record?
Yes. While conducting tests on VIX-64, we found that with a certain manipulation in combination with other virus strains, we were able to get a different biological response from the test subject. Based on our findings, the virus is actually altering the chemistry of the subject's brain. It almost appears as though the frontal cortex of the subject, the area of the brain responsible for problem-solving, memory, language, judgment, impulse control, reasoning, that area of the brain is almost going into hibernation. The hindbrain and medulla, on the other hand, the part of the brain responsible for survival, drive, instinct, the primal portion of the brain, is taking over. It's fascinating and terrifying. I've never seen anything like it before. Only read about it in old medical records and scientific papers. A long time ago, there was a record of an audio signal broadcast via radio station that acted similar to a virus, changing the composition of the human biology in a similar, drastic and primal way. All of that is unconfirmed, though. But this is very much real.
What do you mean I don't have a case? That research facility is directly responsible for his death. I know they are.
I'm sorry for your loss. Truly I am. But your hunch isn't enough to make a case.
It's more than a hunch. He signed up for those clinical trials. Everything was hush-hush, no information. They were injecting him and testing him with who knows what, right up until his final days.
I'm sorry, ma'am. I can't take the case. I just don't see a connection.
Don't see a connection? Oh, I see what's going on here. You're being paid off. Are they watching me? Keeping tabs on me? Trying to see if I'll pursue legal action against them? How much are they paying you?
I don't know what you're talking about, ma'am. Truly.
I'll find someone who will listen. I'll find someone who will take this case.
Yes. She came to the office. She was looking for someone to take her case. No, of course I'm not taking it.
Hey there. Grant?
Yep, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So, as you know, these are very confidential trials. The recordings of this interview will never be copied and will be stored at this facility until the end of the trials, at which point all records will be destroyed. You are aware of this?
Yes.
Good. You filled out all the necessary paperwork. We'll go through all that in a moment, but first of all, do you have any questions for me?
Yes, so, what exactly is being tested? I had a feeling it was some kind of vaccine.
Essentially, yes. After everything that happened with the 2020 virus, our facility, as well as some others, have been tasked with creating as many different permutations and strains as possible. Sort of a preemptive effort to prevent 2020 from happening again. As such, we've been granted approval for human trials much sooner than normal. Everything is very controlled and very safe, so no need to be anxious.
Okay, great. That explains why this paid so well, I suppose. So, what will I be testing?
The test virus we are using is the baseline we renamed VIX, or VIX. We're only a few months into trials at this point, so you'll be testing a strain named VIX-30, and subsequent strains if you're up to it. I'll spare you the boring details, just know that all of these virus permutations are pretty much going to elicit similar symptoms to the flu. However, we'll be monitoring you the whole time, and only need you to have the virus in your system long enough for us to do some research on its effects on the body.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Let's get into this paperwork and we'll get started.
Yes. I've a visual on the target. Female, mid-30s, the wife of number 3. The one with the classified information. I'll call when it's done, and then I'll make a visit to the doctor. Out.
Grant is ready for observation after the latest test. Treatment room C.
Division doesn't want us using names of trial subjects when info is on record. We have to refer to the subject test number. In Grant's case, it's 3. So after the trial is administered and the subject is out of decontamination and ready for observation, they're asking us to use the code phrase and log it into the announcement system.
Got it. 3 has awoken, then. I'll program the AI announcement to detect when a subject leaves containment, so the announcement will be made automatically.
Good. I'll be in shortly. What the hell happened? He made it through almost a dozen strains. It doesn't make any sense. The differences between these strains should be minuscule. How the hell are we going to explain this? Someone has to get on the phone with Dr. Lone. Yes, sir. 3 has passed. Sir, I don't think that's a good idea. We need to shut down and reconfigure the operation. Something isn't right with the strains. They've been modified too heavily. What? I was under the impression that these were clinical trials for vaccine research. Naive, I didn't sign up to be part of something like this. But Yes, sir.
Hello, this is Marcy.
Marcy, it's Lone.
Oh, hi, Doctor.
Send out for another batch of subjects for the next round of clinical trials.
I'm sorry, Doctor, but that's not a good idea. There's still a whole lot of paperwork and red tape that we have to get through to explain the previous incident.
I know, Marcy, just do it.
Okay, if you insist.
Forward me the info for the candidates when you have it. Subject numbers 4, 5, and 6.
Hello, no one is available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone.
Hi, this is Marcy from the Applied Sciences Medical and Research Facility. I saw you submitted an application for a paid clinical trial at our office. At the time we were at capacity, however, due to further clinical trials now being done at the facility, we are accepting more applicants with specific medical histories and physical attributes. Please give me a call back if you're interested.
Dr. Lone, Lab Site Z. I've never seen a reaction to a strain like I did with Subject 9. VIC-64 has proven to be, well, just as dangerous as Division wanted. 9 has become almost totally primal. His sense of humanity is gone. His reason is gone. He tried to attack lab staff earlier. Thank goodness they were wearing protective gear. He barely even looks human anymore. His skin seems like it's melting away. Open, bloody sores all over his body. His hair is falling out. He reacted to the strain in a fraction of the time that other subjects reacted to previous strains. Everything is escalating. What are we even doing to these people? This isn't research. We're scientists and doctors, not biological weapons manufacturers. I just feel like all of this is leading to something bad. We should terminate the program. What the hell?
9 has awoken. 9 has awoken. 9 has awoken.
Hello? Hello?
Rachel, this is Dr. Lone.
Who?
I was one of the doctors involved in your husband's clinical trials.
Why are you calling me?
To help. This research program is not what it appears. It's not what I thought it was. I have to be vague now, but I have some documents I need to get to you. They will explain everything. Again, I'm sorry for your... We have to keep him contained. He can't escape the facility. We don't know the effects of the virus he's carrying, and we have no way of stopping it. Lock everything down.
Doctor, East and West wings are both locked down. No sign of Subject 9, but...
But what?
Some of the staff. 9 made it to some of the staff quarters. 3 were exposed to the subject, likely infection. We've quarantined them, but they've already had contact with other unprotected members of staff.
My God. This can't be happening. The very least I could do is make sure that these records are preserved, so people know it happened. The whole thing started in 2020. All of it. The virus, the lockdowns, the mass hysteria. We were pushed to the brink. The scientific and medical community was under so much pressure. People clamoring for a vaccine, some even accusing the scientific community of stagnating, not doing anything. When a vaccine for the virus was finally manufactured, it sparked a revolution of scientific interest. The world was not about to be caught off guard like that again. We, as the scientific community, vowed to be more proactive, funneling millions and millions of dollars into clandestine scientific research. And after the hysteria died down, our research facility began examining every permutation of the virus we could possibly manufacture. Its research name was VIX. VI for virus, like in its original designation. Virus X. We just didn't know that it was a front. The government wasn't concerned with scientific research. They weren't concerned with keeping people safe, being proactive. They wanted to push this virus to its absolute biological limit, and then weaponize it, just like everything else. Well, it succeeded. We created potentially one of the deadliest biological weapons mankind has ever seen. But mankind aren't the ones yielding it. Maybe this is the universe's way of balancing the scales. holding us accountable. It tried once to keep us in check, but in reality all it had to do was wait for us to do it ourselves. I guess this will be tape 0. My account of everything. So here I go, I suppose. I should introduce myself first. My name is Dr. Robert Lone, and I worked at a government-sanctioned applied sciences and medical research facility. At first we were doing standard medical research, as we should be. Clinical trials, trying to find cures, vaccines. But things went wrong. Very wrong. We were recommissioned, in a way. Recommissioned as a biological weapons test and manufacturing facility. And that's why this whole thing happened. But that's a story for another time. If there is another time, that is. More time isn't necessarily a given nowadays. These things that have been created from the bodies of man, these experiments, these results of these chemical weapons, they resemble a kind of zombie in many ways. One of the final strains of virus we were working on interacted with the human body in the worst possible way. It created leprous sores, bleeding from the eyes, sagging of the skin. It made it almost look like the skin was melting off the human frame. Loss of hair. We made that. So in a way, mankind made its own biggest enemy. Once patient 0, or subject 9 as we called him in the lab, escaped containment, it was all but over. Something like that can't be contained once it's out in the open. I knew that. We all knew that. Luckily, the virus didn't spread through the air like a typical disease. Bodily fluids have to actually be exchanged, which is probably why the virus creates so many open sores on its host. In addition, the virus triggered some primal animalistic instincts to take over the host, making an attack from an infected an almost certainty if it spotted you, or sensed you somehow. I knew in my heart that we should have stopped after Subject 3 died in one of the experiments. There was something wrong about that. I still remember his face. Grant, his name was. A nice young man, with a young wife. He didn't deserve to die like that. But then there was Subject 9, when the virus became a predator, taking over its host. Shortly after escaping containment, Subject 9 attacked some staff members. That's when we discovered that unlike the original clinical strain of VIC-64, which was our laboratory designation for the virus, once it was active in a host being spread to another live host, the virus took effect much quicker. Whereas it took a couple of hours or even days to see the full effect in Subject 9, when Subject 9 attacked, those victims were showing symptoms within minutes. And within the hour, they were just as rabid and inhuman as he was. VIC-64 does something to the host's muscle density as well. Despite the disgusting, sickly look the virus will give the host, somehow it also increases their muscle density, making the host or the infected much harder for potential victims to fight off physically. Doesn't make them bulletproof, mind you. I saw evidence of that. but the virus does give the infected a tangible physical advantage on a muscular level. If it wasn't so horrifying, it would be fascinating. Enhancing the human body like that. But at what cost? Anyway, I have to keep moving. Efforts to contain this thing have failed, and it's already been almost a week. They're trying to keep it quiet. This thing isn't going to spread as fast as an airborne virus would, but from what I've heard, it's already crossed state lines. The local towns are in an absolute panic. People are fleeing, looting, attacking each other. And some normally very busy streets are empty. I mean, I haven't seen it like this since, well, since 2020. Which is the year that started all this, I guess. But like I said, I'll have to keep moving. I have to find my family. I'll end this log here for now. As far as I know, Dr. Seaver didn't make it out of the lab that day. It's a shame. He was a brilliant scientist. Although to this day I suspect that he was more into the idea of creating biological weapons for division than I was. That day was a bloodbath. So many doctors, researchers, assistants turned into maniacal, frenzied creatures. I'm still not 100% sure who made it out and who didn't. I do know that Marcy made it out. She called me a short while before cell service went down. She made it out of the lab and was trying to find her way back to her fiancé. I hope she makes it. I hold a lot of guilt for making her complicit in all of this, getting her to find new patients for the clinical trials. I feel guilt for the patients as well, many of them not even truly knowing what we were doing in that facility, including Grant and his wife. I tried to stop it, I really did, but it was too late. I contacted Grant's wife, Rachel. I tried to give her documents outlining what was going on in the lab so she could leak it to the media or something, but it just didn't work out. And then the division agents started hunting me. Luckily, I suppose, before they could get to me, all of this happened. I don't believe Rachel was so lucky as to get away, but who knows? Maybe that was a better fate than succumbing to the virus. Only time will tell. They aren't curing it anytime soon, I know that much. The lab contained all of our research on VIC-64, and all the computer files were remotely deleted by Division once the outbreak happened to cover their tracks. All the classified patient files. Typical. That research could have led to a cure, but as usual, higher-ups are only concerned with keeping their hands clean, when in reality, their hands are the dirtiest of all. There might be some hard copies of our research, but that lab is ground zero for all of this. As of right now, it's inaccessible, or at the absolute very least, highly dangerous. Way too dangerous to recover any physical files. Of course, I wouldn't be surprised if Division sends some of their own agents to recover those files. But as for me, I'm done with it. With all of it. I know how this is going to go. Luckily, since the infected symptoms come on so quick without any real incubation period, it's easy to tell who's infected. The snarling, bloody mess that's in front of you. So for the time being, it's unlikely for the virus to spread overseas. Hopefully it doesn't get too far in the States. But I know from studying it that it can mutate. It can adapt, change. Who knows what it'll look like a month from now, if it's still around. If 2020 was any indication, the government response to this will be unsatisfactory. But no, I'm done. The days of research, discovery, development, those days are over. Now there's only one thing that I'm concerned with. Survival.
I've done a lot of things. Most of it confidential. Most of it classified. If you can name something done in the name of covert operations, I've probably done it. For many of those years, though, I've worked for a discrete branch of the government that simply goes by division. Division is basically an umbrella that encompasses a wide variety of different operations. The largest, however, is the research and development section of Division, mainly working to covertly experiment and create biological weapons and viruses. I was never truly involved in that sector of Division until recently. I mainly did what others in my field would consider grunt work, but I did it well. Armed escort, documentation retrieval, interrogation, intimidation. Not necessarily glamorous by any means, but satisfying in its own way. And I prided myself on being discreet, professional. Even in my younger days, when I used to run with a more rough and tumble kind of gang, I still managed to develop my professionalism in that line of work. When my friend Mac was killed during a meeting and pickup gone wrong, I knew it was time to get out of hitting for gangs and find a more stable gig, which led me to the PMC Briar Patch, which was later dissolved and acquired by the division as their own security and deployment force. Essentially, something went wrong at one of the covert R&D facilities. They were attempting to manufacture a biological weapon. Something ended up getting contaminated and a disease was beginning to spread in the surrounding area. Nasty stuff, too. Apparently, it was something you'd see out of a zombie movie. I didn't have all the details, but I knew it was bad. But as long as the spread was contained, things would be fine. Our team's job wasn't containment, though. It was retrieval. When everything went down, Division remotely deleted the servers at the R&D lab. Obviously, they wouldn't want anyone to know what was being worked on. However, even in the age as digital as this one, there were countless hard copies and paper files detailing experimentation info, observation from clinical trials, medical research on various weaponized viruses, toxins, and diseases. We had to retrieve what we could and torch the rest. The entire facility was to be destroyed. We were given very little information regarding the nature of the virus or those infected. All we were told was that it was a highly contagious virus that can be transferred via exchange of bodily fluids through contact. It is highly destructive to the organs and brain of the affected, and to treat any infected is hostile and eliminate on sight. A little perturbing, but simple enough. To be honest, it had been about 48 hours since containment was broken, so I really wasn't expecting to run into any infected at the lab. It was my understanding that the virus would quickly kill any infected. I was wrong. We deployed a team to the lab. It was a 3-man team. A man who went by the name of Trout, a woman named Lizzie who had the combat skills we had but also had medical knowledge, valuable to have in a situation like this, and myself, Codename Rabbit because of my time spent working for Briarpatch back in the day. We also had some basic hazardous material protective suits so as not to get infected, should there be any traces of the virus left in the facility. We made our way into the facility, designated as Lab Z. It was underground with only one main above-ground entrance. Most of the lights were still on, but you could tell that something happened here. Something more than a simple containment breach. It looked like there had been an attack. Furniture was overturned, equipment was destroyed, objects strewn about. And this was just in the first few areas. The files we were looking for were much deeper into the facility. And it didn't take long before we started coming across bodies. And those, well, we weren't expecting what we saw. The bodies on the ground were completely mutilated. Some looked like their whole throats were ripped out, faces contorted into a scream for their final moments. It looked like a horrifying way to go. Other bodies looked as if something had fed off their guts, stomachs gaping open, oozing blood and black pus. Something was very wrong here. I spoke quietly with Trout and Lizzie. Trout said, "Something is off. What kind of a virus does this?" We agreed, but the mission was the mission. I still had a creeping feeling that Division had a much clearer picture of what they were sending us into than we did. Yet we kept moving forward, toward the records area of the facility. This area was dimly lit. The power on this side of the building was off. We switched on our flashlights and continued moving. "Should have brought NVGs," Lizzie said. "Should have brought more people," was my thought. But I kept it to myself. It was right around that time that we started to hear noises. It was faint, but audible. I looked back at the rest of the team. I could tell they heard it too. But we kept moving. As we did, we made our way down the long, narrow corridor flanked on either side by exam and testing rooms. The snarling and growling sounds got more and more intense, more distinguishable from the ambient noises of the lab. When we were about 50 feet to the entrance of the records area, I heard Trout whisper, "Look." At once we pointed our flashlights down the corridor in unison, and we spotted the silhouette of a person standing somewhat behind one of the large filing cabinets. We glanced at each other, somewhat nervously, but moved forward. "Sir," I said loudly. "Sir, are you okay?" We approached slowly, the man's figure heaving up and down as if he was taking large breaths. We slowly approached the figure from behind, me still trying to get his attention. "Sir." All of a sudden the figure whirled around. All three of us lifted our weapons at the figure's head. "Thank goodness," he said, wheezing. "You gotta get me out of here. One of those things attacked me and I was barely able to..." A gunshot rang out in the small corridor. I turned to see the smoke from Trout's rifle dissipating. "Jesus, man, what the hell did you do that for?" I yelled at him as the lab tech crumpled to the ground. "Orders are no infected survive. He was attacked. Means he was infected," Trout said coldly. He was right. I grunted out of frustration and was about to push the door to the records room open when I stopped. The snarling and growling noises had ceased. It was now eerily quiet in the corridor, save for one noise. A new noise. Footsteps. A lot of them. I shined my flashlight down the hall we just came down. I saw movement. A lot of movement. Shadowy figures moving down the hall at quite a pace towards us. "Time to go," I said. "Into the records room, everyone." I opened the door and Lizzie entered. I beckoned for Trout to go in next, but before he could, all of a sudden something appeared at the door of the exam room behind him and grabbed him. I lifted my gun and my light to see what was happening, and it was... I've never seen something like that before. This thing, it looked like a man, but its eyes were deep and sunken, almost black. There were open sores, oozing black pus. Its skin looked like it was melting off the bones. These were the things headed toward us from down the hall. Its jaw opened unnaturally wide as it grabbed Trout in its arms. I could tell, just by how easily it knocked him around, how strong this thing was. Unnaturally strong. Its jaw ripped right through the hazmat suit. Trout screamed and fired off his gun multiple times, bullets ricocheting off the metallic walls. I was lucky I wasn't hit. Blood began spraying everywhere. I tried to find a shot to take down the creature, but I couldn't. And Trout was screaming in pain. "I'm sorry," I whispered under my breath as I took aim, and shot Trout in the head, killing him. The creature, startled, recoiled and disappeared into the blackness of the corridor. Trout was a good soldier. I had done a few operations with him in the past. He didn't deserve to go out like that. I quickly ducked into the records room. Lizzie was shaking, gun still at the ready. She had seen it all, just like I had. "We need to barricade the door." We tipped over cabinets and moved furniture and chairs against the door. I honestly didn't know how long that would keep those things out. But that was a problem to solve in a little bit. For now, there was an objective to complete. We searched in silence for any records pertaining to the virus. I found a few marked with a recent date and the title VIX-69. I flipped through. This looked like one of the files. "Over here, check this out." Lizzie pulled a large box from under one of the counters. "Cassette tapes?" There was a slamming and scratching at the door. The barricade we built buckled with every bump. I plucked one of the cassette tapes out of the box. Lizzie, who had been digging around in the box, found an old player and popped it in.
Were exposed to the subject, likely infection. We've quarantined them, but they've already had contact with other unprotected men.
Sorry, Doctor, but that's not a good idea. There's still a whole lot of paperwork and red tape that we have to get through to explain the previous incident.
Yes, so what exactly is being tested? I had a feeling it was some kind of
I stopped the tape. "Grab as many as you can. It's time to leave." We scooped up as many tapes as we could and began searching for a way out. If we could just exit the room somehow, we could get behind the group of infected and make our way out of the facility. We searched and searched, but couldn't find a way. Until I spotted a ventilation duct after moving one of the ceiling tiles. It would be tight, but I knew at the very least Lizzie would be able to fit. "You have to go," I said. "Take the files and the tapes, go through the duct, get behind the infected, and get out of here." and blow the entrance to this place so nothing else gets in or out. She told me no, she wasn't leaving me alone, and we'd find a way out. But I already knew there were no other options. I said to her, "This is my OP, and I'm telling you to go. I'll make sure those things are distracted." I heard her curse me under her breath, but she finally gave me one final salute before removing her hazmat suit, grabbing the files and tapes, and disappearing into the duct. Quite a dramatic end to what has already been a pretty dramatic life. As the barricade began to break down, and I saw the first couple of glimpses of those things entering the room, I hoped that this was contained in time. I hoped that Lizzie made it out, and that research could be used to fabricate a cure. I hoped that this virus was created and would die in this lab. Because if not, well, we were in for something even worse than what happened in 2020. The room shook from an explosion at the entrance to the lab as the final pieces of the barricade were knocked down. As the infected creatures burst into the room, snarling and bleeding, I lifted my rifle for one final time.